So the Miami Heat and Chris Bosh put out a joint statement yesterday saying that he will not be playing for the remainder of the 2016 playoffs. So this should quiet the tension between Bosh and the team over his status for the rest of the season. Now, in the joint statement from Heat and Bosh, it says in part, the Heat, Chris, the doctors and medical team have been working together throughout this process and will continue to do so to return Chris to playing basketball as soon as possible. Stephen A., what do you make of the latest?
You know what? To be quite honest with you, I don't want to make. I don't know what to make of this issue. If I'm being totally honest with you, it smells in some sense. It's perfectly understandable in others. The primary objective is for Chris Bosh to be safe and healthy when he's on the court. I have no doubt that that's the Miami Heat's primary concern, because they love the guy, and more importantly, they're a first-class organization that wouldn't go about the business of putting his health in jeopardy intentionally. So I'm certainly not trying to cast any aspersions on them in that regard. I do think from a business perspective, this works to their advantage. If Chris Bosh is out, particularly for any lengthy period of time, and you find yourself in a situation where insurance is paying his salary as opposed to you being obligated to do so, that positions you to save some money, not to mention allowing you to also go out there and spend in the off season without it hurting your pockets. So in that regard, even though, again, nobody's questioning the intent of the Miami Heat, we can't ignore the fact that this position that they've taken jointly with Chris Bosh, I say that in jest, obviously works to their advantage. In the case of Chris Bosh, you know that he's a team player. Skip Bayless, you pointed out accurately yesterday what a deep thinker he is, how he's a good brother, incredibly nice man. He doesn't want to rock the boat or ruffle feathers, but he desperately wants to play and feels that he's ready to play. Got his own doctor, as reported by the Miami Herald weeks ago, to give him the okay, but the Heat doctors didn't necessarily approve, which is why his wife started that hashtag, Bring Bosh Back, which is what she sent out to Ethan Skolnick, the columnist for the Miami Heat. So we understand that there's a divide there. But Chris Bosh is not going to want to ruffle feathers. But it also raised a red flag in my mind where it was a joint statement. Instead of Chris Bosh coming out and speaking for himself, here he is allowing the Miami Heat to speak for him. And that says to me that in some fashion, he was compelled to do so. I'm not saying that's a negative. Again, it's business. And he may have very well come to the conclusion that it's to his advantage and the advantage of the Heat. And being the team player that he is, he might have seen the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm quite certain from what I'm being told, the family disagreed with his position. Some of his teammates disagreed with his position. Folks wanted him to come out and issue his own statement, but he neglected to do so. And again, that has the Miami Heat written all over it, because Pat Riley, you're going to do stuff his way now. In most instances, that's just the way it's going to be. And then, of course, we take into account the union and his agent, Henry Thomas, who I believe he should shop for on Christmas. He should cook Thanksgiving dinner for, because the man got him $118 million. We all know that I've said that in the past. But Henry Thomas is an exceptional agent. And I find it a tad bit odd that throughout this entire process, he has been very quiet. So when I look at it from that perspective, I'm thinking about D. Wade's contract coming up and how he's supposed to get paid and how they shared the same agent. I'm thinking about Pat Riley pursuing KD, or if a miracle happens and LeBron James decides to come back to South Beach, facilitating that whole process. I'm thinking about all of those things. But I'm going to tell you something. In the end, I don't think that Miami can be maligned, because they're clearly making decisions that, number one, doesn't jeopardize the health of Chris Bosh, while at the same time benefits them from a business perspective. But as it pertains to this season, it's a damn shame that it ended this way, because that means Chris Bosh doesn't play. That means it inhibits their ability to legitimately compete for a championship. And that means another year in the career of the great Dwayne Wade ultimately ends up coming to waste. Because with Chris Bosh, with this crew, they'd have a chance of beating Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals, assuming they get past Toronto. Without Chris Bosh, they're not beating Cleveland. And that means that another year in the career of Dwayne Wade goes to waste.
You're right. So I got to go back to your first word that you used. Smells. It's something about it smells. I'm not privy to the inner workings here. You know more than I do, but even you're not completely privy to what happened. So we're a little shooting in the dark here, but I cringed yesterday when I saw the story because I was surprised that Chris backed off so quickly and that the Players Association backed off so quickly and acquiesced and issued, I don't know if you want to call it a joint statement, at least one they had signed off on, that he is done for the rest of the year. After all that they had done, he and his wife, to campaign to get him back on the court, just boom, and it was over. And I'm assuming that Pat Riley appealed to Chris's better judgment, and he has plenty of that, and said, hey, I'm just guessing here, but Chris, you become too big a distraction for us. It's more trouble than it's worth. Then after that, I don't know what other, were there legal threats here? You're under contract. You do what we say. I have no idea. But all I know is what we stated yesterday. Chris Bosh, as you said, is deep. I said it yesterday. He's smart. He has great perspective. He has 5 kids and a wife. So he's risking a lot, and he's not your basic thick-headed psycho competitor who just wants to, quote-unquote, die for the cause, risk literally dying for the cause. He made a logical, reasoned, long-term decision. My doctor says I'm perfectly okay here. It's low to no risk. So I feel good. I want to play. I want to help because we have a chance to do something special here. And at the last second, he just backed completely off, ceased, desisted, no public comments from him, no more tweets, no more Instagram, silence. It just hurt me a little bit because I believe that Chris 1,000% believed he could have played. I get the concerns. We don't want to see another Hank Gathers on the court, another death on the court. There are PR concerns for the Heat organization. We get all that. But in the end, I'm with what you brought up yesterday. There's a big picture advantage here for him sitting out, insurance to kick in. It might clear the decks, open the doors for maybe a Kevin Durant to be added to the mix next year. Okay, great, but it doesn't help you now, and it certainly doesn't help Chris now. And if I know Chris, he's crushed today over this, just crushed.
Well, I would say this, and Skip, you'll know based on what I'm about to say how serious I am when I say this. I don't toot my own horn. I've broken a lot of stories in my NBA career, and I am telling you, there's so much that I wish I could say because 4 well-placed sources on this matter. Bosh had allowed this fight to continue. There's a lot more that I could have said. But it's amazing that after we discussed this on First Take yesterday, the story, dare we say, was somewhat neutralized?
It was.
And so as a result of that, because again, he reached an agreement and he's not going to play for the rest of the season. But there are very, very, very few stories that I've ever been as confident, and I'm usually very confident in my information. The kind of stuff that comes on here, I'm just going to say to you, I have no issue with Miami. Miami, this is business. I would have an issue if they were jeopardizing the health of Chris Bosh. That's something they would never do intentionally. Sure. So they're not jeopardizing his health. And they conducted business. Now, how that's going to affect free agency, because I can tell you from a player perspective, you have some players that are not happy with how things went down. And you have somebody like LeBron who has grown to be increasingly closer to Chris Bosh. So because of that, he's aware of what's going on. And any noise about his consideration of returning to South Beach, this sort of stains that to some degree. Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is an astute brother. Kevin Durant is going to do his homework. Kevin Durant is going to look into all options because he's an educated brother and he thinks like that. He's smart. and he's going to pay attention to the kind of stuff that he's hearing. So that may not affect Miami in a positive way, but nevertheless, they did nothing wrong here. They're conducting business while at the same time looking out for Chris Bosh. I'm not saying anybody did wrong, but I find it odd that his representation was quiet in this matter publicly, knowing that he and his wife were out front publicly. The agent was quiet. And I find it odd that you got the union that ultimately goes down to South Beach, and all of a sudden there's no separate statement by Chris Bosh. It's just the team.
Yep.
I'm like, wait a minute now. I expected something a little bit different than what ended up happening. But ultimately what it comes down to is that Pat Riley and Miami prevailed.
Okay, so bottom line, are you suggesting it's possible, it's just possible, that this incident hurt Pat Riley's reputation among players in and outside of Miami more than it helped it?
Yes.
Got it. Next question.
But not him directly.
Yeah, I got it.
Just the business.
Yeah.
And business aside, we're all rooting for Chris Bosh to be healthy and back on the court as soon as he can. Up next.
And by the way, Molly, I'm not suggesting. It's what I was specifically told.
Yep.
Yesterday and this morning.
We got it. All right. We have a special guest joining the desk, Grammy Award winner, hip-hop artist Lecrae. I can't wait to discuss his new projects and, of course, his message. Stay tuned for that. That's next. Hey, how we doing?
Hey, how's it going?